Thank you for turning to page 121. Welcome back to page 121. Today, in our game break, I want to take a look at a game that I've loved for a very long time, Traveller, Science Fiction Adventure in the Far Future, by Games Designers Workshop. This is not GW, the guys who make Warhammer. That's Games Workshop. This is a Games Designers Workshop. Game Designers Workshop. This came out, Traveller, in 1977. GDW had already been a publisher of a lot of bookshelf games, a lot of historical games, kind of like the old Avalon Hill. And this is their first foray into role playing. This came out in June of '77, coincidental to Star Wars. A lot of people like to say that this was a knee jerk reaction to Star Wars, but it wasn't. This game was already in production and, in fact, printed when Star Wars launched in May of '77. So the idea that this was a quickie out for Star Wars is not true. This was published, as I say, 1977 in Champaign, Illinois. A lot of guys from the University of Illinois who attended there were instrumental in developing it, but the game itself is credited to Mark Miller. It's just a fun game. It's very famous. If you're an older gamer like you are aware of Traveller. You've probably encountered it a time or two. I encountered it because a friend of mine brought it home from college. Said, "Hey, you're sitting down and you're playing a game of Traveller," and I said, "Okie dokie." I rolled up my first character, which was a Gauss rifle wielding barbarian called Rat Crusher, and I was hooked. Now that's one of the sillier aspects, but Traveller lends itself more to serious science fiction. So this box set that I'm showing you now is actually a smaller box set. I'll show you a standard book with it. These books were published in pamphlet size, and they are affectionately called the LBBs, the little black books, because the books themselves tend to have black covers. These three books, I'm going to move the box there. These three books came in the box. You would get book 1, Characters in Combat, book 2, Starships, and book 3, Worlds and Adventures. As you can see, my copies are very well loved. These have seen a lot of play on my table for 40 years. My players are very indulgent of me. I get a little burnt here and there running D&D. Always love D&D, but everybody needs a break now and again, which is why I'm calling these segments game breaks. Traveller was one of the games that I would simply say, "Hey, I feel like playing Traveller next week," and my players would say, "Okay, great." Actually, not true. They would like it. Traveller is a very fun game. It's well, at the time it was more hard science than science fiction. It tried to stay within actual physics as understood in 1977. That's not to say that it's always accurate, of course, but it wasn't the high science fiction of, say, Star Trek. Uh, and if anything, I think it has more of a grittier feel of Star Wars than Star Trek. But the idea behind the game was you created your character, a la D&D. Keep in mind, by 1977, D&D had been around for 3 years, and these guys were on college campuses, and I'm sure played D&D. So the characters have a deep origin in D&D. So here is your character sheet. This was the actual character sheet. You could photocopy for your own personal use, which, as you see, I did a billion years ago. And I'll go in a little closer on the. And you had a UPP, a Universal Personality Profile, and that was one of the unique things of Traveller, is you could be identified entirely by 6 statistics: strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, education, and social status. So very similar to D&D in that regard. But your UPP, you could just express it with those 6 digits on a sheet of paper, and everyone knew the sequence: strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, education, social standing. So you would be able to take a glance and know what a character had and could do. This game was based on a 2d6 character generation. So you'd throw 2 dice 6 and write the number down and go across the board. And there is a rumor that you could be killed in character generation in Traveller. And I'm just here to tell you, absolutely you can. And in fact, I have. One of the more fun aspects of Traveller. Traveller is about the only role-playing game that I ever did game zeros for. In other words, rather than actually play the game, we would get together for one night and create the characters. Simply because you could have the characters die in character generation. It would be fun. Your character would start at the age of 18, would apply to a service. There were a variety of services. I'm not going to go into those in this video, but amongst the Navy, the Army, the Marines, that kind of thing. And if you got accepted into the service, you had 4-year terms of service. So you would spend your 4 years. At the end of the 4 years, you're now 22. You would throw to see if you re-enlist, if you choose to, if you're forced to re-enlist, which can happen, and you would get some skills for having served your 4 years. Traveller is very skill-oriented. Unlike D&D, it is more based on skills than character classes or anything like that. So you continue in 4-year increments. So you'd be 22, your next term would be 26, your next term you'd be 30. And each time you did that, you re-up for your new service, you'd have to roll to see if you survived it. And some of the services, some of the survival rolls could be quite high. On 2 dice 6, you could be looking at an 8 or a 9 to survive, depending on how long you'd been in service and what type of service it was. So it was very possible to lose a character. And one of the things you had to learn very quickly in Traveller was when it was time to say, okay, my character's created, I'm out. Because if you rolled that one unlucky roll on a character that had been doing really well for you, you were just out of luck. The character was dead, you crumple the sheet, you start again. Now, of course, we didn't always do that. If there was a character that we really were enjoying, we were on a good pace, we'd gotten a good rapport for it, which you could do very early with this character generation system, we would allow the character instead to suffer an injury. And that is also opted in the rules. So it's possible to simply be injured and suffer some kind of detriment to the characters and maybe lose a point of dexterity or point of strength, and then continue on. So you didn't have to kill the character, but honestly, it was a lot of fun to roll the character and have it die in creation. So Traveller came out in 1977. As I say, I got into it in 1981. This is my box set. As you can see, it has been much loved over the years. It's taken a little travel damage, no pun intended. Some water on the back. Undoubtedly an old Coke. But it is well loved. Was also a very fun game to travel with because all you needed was this little box. I just want to touch real quickly on combat in Traveller. You did not have hit points in Traveller. In original Traveller, which this is, your strength, dexterity, and endurance served as your hit points. So for instance, if I had 7 in each of those, and I got into a gun combat, somebody's shooting at me, Traveller had very lethal, closer to real world damage than D&D had. If I took 6 points of damage in that gun combat, I would take it 6 points off of my functioning strength, dexterity, or endurance. Now I played 2 ways. One was the DM would roll it randomly and say, throw a 6-sider and say, okay, it ends up being your endurance. You lose 8 or 6 functioning points of your 7 endurance, with corresponding problems of your characters moving about and doing activities because now they've been wounded. This was meant in Traveller to reflect the lethality of getting shot. And it was fun. The problem becomes that most characters are very reluctant to engage in combat in Traveller. And when you have that, then it does tend to slow things down. Again, not criticizing the game, I love it. But we did actually introduce hit points as an alternative thing, so you weren't constantly losing your statistics. Because once one statistic was down, so in my example of taking 6 points off my endurance, I have 1 point left. I get shot again for 6 points. I lose my last point of endurance, and I lose 5 more points off either my dexterity or my strength. At 1 stat down, I'm very, very limited in what I can do. 2 stats down, I'm actually borderline or am unconscious. And then 3 stats down, I'm no longer among the living. So Traveler did have a few issues with that, in my opinion. I love Traveler. I love the universe, but their combat system was a little tough, and I tweaked it over the years. I'm going to show a few other ways that they marketed Traveler. And this is just by way of me bragging a little bit, because these books are prized among Traveler collectors, and I am a Traveler collector. So there is the Traveler book. This one was out in 1982. And this just takes all the information from the LBBs, the little black books, and puts it into a regular magazine-sized hardcover. This book, as you can see, it's still a big black book, but it has the information from the earlier books. And in 1981, they came out with. I'm sorry, this one. This one's from '82. This is the deluxe edition of Traveler. Again, it's a magazine-sized box, but oddly enough, inside you get the 3 little black books, as well as a map of some of the known space. It was just a nice collectible. It was a good way to get into Traveler. So this was 82. This was actually 83. And one other quick thing I want to show is Understanding Traveler. And if you look in the corner, it says free. Hobby stores used to just put these on the counter in a little stand-up display, and you could go ahead and you could take it for free. You'd go and page through it, and you'd see what the Traveler universe was and how the game played, and then a product listing of all the stuff they had. So I got this from a hobby store a million years ago, and even though I was a Traveler player at the time, I still took it because, hey, it was free and it was Traveler. So that's it for this game break. I just wanted to touch a little bit on Traveler. I may do some future Traveler videos because I really like this game. It's a very comprehensive universe that's gone through a lot of changes. I just want to say Traveler is still very much alive. Mongoose Publishing has been printing it for, about 14 years. They're on their 2nd edition, and it's still going strong. There's an excellent online fanzine called Freelance Traveler. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's free. They just published issue 107. It's a really quality product. The content is from game ideas. Doing it my way is one of their things, how players run the game. But they also have reviews of some of the older Traveler products, treating them as if they were just published, which, of course, for obvious reasons, is near and dear to my heart. So I recommend Freelance Traveler quite a bit. If I can, I'll link it to my video. And I just want to say one more time, Traveler, I love you, and we'll be playing soon. That's it for page 121. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Well, that closes the book on another episode of page 121. Please leave your comments below, and if you enjoyed what you saw, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.